Libet Cladet. Mi go ten minute geni, kino way man pick up a shot number. Didn't get to let go make it a gay. Nishnabek again in now, the dome the sing don't you. First of all, I would just like to begin by acknowledging the Algonquin Anishinaabe people whose land we are meeting on today. I would also like to thank all of you who have chosen to join us in the Solidarity March in support of missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls. I especially want to recognize our elders who are here today with us to support us in this crisis within our communities, and the family members who are here who have lost a loved one to violence. And I want to recognize Laurie Ojig, who just spoke, and talking about her daughter and the friend's daughter, Shannon, and also one of our own staff members in our office, Lorna Martin, who lost her mother to violence. She was murdered. And any of the other families who are here, I look out and I see different names out there on posters. I'm so glad that you're here to join us in this, and we honor your lost one, your loved one, and we hope that we can make a change so you can get that peace and be able to deal with the loss of your loved one. We are gathered here to show our solidarity, to stand together and to speak out against the violence that continues to harm Aboriginal women and girls across Canada. And we know that this also occurs in other countries where Indigenous women suffer gendered and racialized violence. The Native Women's Association of Canada has been actively working with our partners and supporters to raise awareness of this issue since 2005. We have certainly seen some changes since that time. The problem of violence against Aboriginal women and girls is now on the agendas of the national, provincial, and territorial governments. These governments are beginning to include this issue in their day-to-day work through funding allocations, working groups, and conferences. We are also talking about it at this Women's World Gathering today. There are ongoing improvements in how the media reports on cases of violence against Aboriginal women and girls. There are increasing numbers of thoughtful and targeted approaches to combat violence, such as the Sister Watch program in Vancouver, the I Am a Kind Man initiative in Ontario, and the many good and effective programs delivered by women's shelters and women's organizations. Many of these approaches are community-driven and emphasize partnerships and collaborative approaches to supporting one another across the silos that divide our legal, justice, policing, and social service systems. And yet, despite these changes, we are continuing to add the names of missing and murdered Aboriginal and women and girls to our Sisters in Spirit database. We continue to feel the sadness and distress every time we hear of yet another sister gone, another family who are experiencing the heartbreak, anger, and pain, the grief of losing a lost one to violence. We continue to see the ignorant, racist, hurtful comments made by individuals about Aboriginal women and girls, and about the issues that they confront in their everyday lives. Issues that stem from Canada's history of colonization, which are maintained through oppressive, systemic barriers to the respect for and proper treatment of our women and girls. Every time that an Aboriginal woman or girl is reported missing or found murdered, we ask why, and how can this crisis continue? We sometimes cannot comprehend how ineffective and limited the response to this critical issue has been. We ask, how can we still be losing our women and girls to violence? We, as a society, as communities, as families, and as individuals, must work for and implement changes that address the root causes of violence. This is much more difficult and complex than simply responding to the outcomes of violent acts. We also must ensure that our organizations that represent and assist Aboriginal women and their families are able to bring forward concerns and participate on an effective basis, both at the decision-making tables and at investigative venues, such as the British Columbia Missing Women Commission of Inquiry. This is also referred to as the OFO Commission. And while NWAC has been granted standing, we have not been granted the funds to ensure that we do proper representation on behalf of our women. We do not have the funds to secure legal counsel. We will continue to work for action, for respect, for justice, for effective measures that reduce and then eliminate the impacts of colonization, racism, inequality, and poverty on all our First Nations, our Métis communities, and Inuit peoples in Canada. Only then will our parents be relieved of the worry that their daughters are vulnerable, that their daughters are not vulnerable to violence. Only then will all of our children be able to grow up knowing the love and care of their mothers. Only then would all our relations be safe and live in the peace for all the days that our Creator has granted them and us. Miigwech, and in closing, I would just like to ask, if I can, a minute's silence for all our missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls across Canada, and indeed across the globe.